There's a place that I've dreamed of, where I can free my mind. I hear the sounds of the season and lose all sense of time. Feels like we're in a dream, you know what I mean.
Right there, Camp McIntosh.
Amen, Mikey. And yes, we'd love to see you guys up here at Camp McIntosh next year in 2026. We will be making an announcement. We have a logo that we have to put together, as well as the pricing. But in the meantime, we are half full at Camp McIntosh. We're a little more than half full at Horwood Lake Lodge. Both places, both venues are CFN retreats, and we would love to see you folks there, as we love to see you each and every Monday here on CFN Live. Hope you guys had a great weekend. What a roller coaster. If you're out here in Ontario, what an absolute roller coaster of weather we are currently having and have had leading up to today. And we're going to be talking about that with Jay, because there's a phenomenon that happened in Lake Erie that I think is worthy of discussion, because it's not often it happens. We do see small inklings of it every once in a while, but when we get winds like we've had, sustained winds like we've had, certain phenomenons occur, and it's cool to discuss it, just in case you aren't from this area. Perhaps it happens in your neck of the woods, but needless to say, it's always good to learn. It's always good to be in the know. Ed McKenzie, first here. How you doing, Ed? Good to see you, buddy. Rob's in the house. Thanks for the share, my friend. Really appreciated that. As always, Mr. Howard. How are you, Dean? How's everything going with you, my friend? We got Shane Richard in the house. Steve's with us. How you doing, Steve? Mark Wolf is here. Nice to see you, Mark. Thanks for joining us. Richard, as always, thanks for all of the sharing you do. Again, I don't think CFN would have half the reach we would if it wasn't for some of the sharing that you do. Eve, hope the event went well. We shared it last Monday, as you probably saw. Hope the event went well. If you can, leave us a few comments or just maybe a few takeaways in the comments. Let us know how that event went last week. Luke's in the house. How you doing, Luke? Joel's here. How we doing, Joel? Mike's in the house. There's the man that I was hoping to get to. Whatever Richard can't get to, this man here. I can't thank this man enough. And right now he's throwing the phone up against the wall or stepping on it. It has to be said. It's not said enough. The artwork, the edits, the connection, the community that this man has helped build with CFN. Between you and Walt, I can't thank you enough. But Steve, as I said, it is so refreshing when you're getting busy, life gets busy, whatever gets busy, you're able to click on, and the first thing that pops up is one of your beautiful edits. Bless you, my friend. Really can't thank you enough. Will you tell Tracy, Luke? Scotty says hi back. Hope everything went well with you guys. I think he just went on vacation. He just came back, if I'm not mistaken. It's nice to see you guys get away to a warm planet. Corey, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you as well. Another pillar of our community. Gary, always a pleasure to have you. James is in the house. Nice to see you, brother. Lloyd's here. Holy smokes, we got a lot of folks here. Daryl's here. Lloyd's here. George is here. Fantastic. Yes, happy. Can you imagine, George? I hate to say this because I know what your reaction is going to be. It's going to be like most. We're going to be celebrating Christmas in less than a month. It feels like we just wrapped up summer. It just feels like we wrapped up our last CFN retreat at Camp McIntosh. Where does the time go? I don't know. Great to hear, Eve. Thanks so much for that. Tony, as always, my friend, nice to see you, and thanks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stop it now. I figured this would be his reaction. But again, guys, if you ever have a chance, if you ever get an edit done by Steve, you know what he loves best? Share it. Just share it to your profile. We don't need thank yous. As Steve will test, we don't need thank yous. It's nice to get every once in a while, don't get me wrong. But more so than everything, share it. Share it to your profile. We really appreciate that. So keep up the great work, Steve. And again, can't thank you enough, buddy. Cannot thank you enough. Christian's in the house. We have the next generation of anglers. This is Stalworth, and I have a feeling I will be interviewed by this gentleman very soon down the road, somewhere in between, because I think he's got the gift of gab. He certainly has what I have, and for those who do see it and have it, you certainly understand. And Christian, I love the work you're doing. You and Trevor Barnucz, you guys are becoming stalwarts in our community, and we're going to do our best to make sure you get the exposure you deserve, because you're doing some wonderful, wonderful things. With a few announcements we've already made, there's only a few more left to be made. Going along with the thank yous for those who are receiving your CFN Fish Off awards and gifts, prizes, whatever you want to call it. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to thank Shimano. We cannot thank the generous folks over at Shimano enough for everything that they do for the CFN Fish Off, as well as our CFN community. When you take that extra time, show a picture, and say a little blurb, we really appreciate it, because at the end of the day, we can only say so much. So when it comes from you guys, it hammers home. One other announcement that I do have to make, our good buddy Brad will appreciate this, as will I. We currently have 3 shows right now that we have announced that are going to be in Chatham, Caledonia, and Kitchener. We will be making more announcements as we get a little bit closer to the end of December, because as we get into January, decisions are going to have to be made. And based on the 3 venues right now, there's really only one that we would carry forward with. And I'm only saying that just because we need to make it worth the vendor's while. So, folks, if you are looking to sign on as a vendor, any and all information can be provided. For all those who have already signed up, thank you so much. It just makes it that much easier, so that when we get to that time where we have to put down a deposit that we're never going to get back, we just want to make sure that we're at that stage of providing you folks a good show. Because if we can't do a good show for the vendors, and of course, if we can't do a good show for those who are spectating and supporting the show, it's just not worth doing it. At the end of the day, I don't want to put a half-hour show together if we could do a much better job with a fuller venue. There are also some announcements that Brad and I are very proud to announce in the coming weeks and months, but I will let you all in on a bit of a backstory of what's going on with CFN and some of these larger shows. As it is right now, the Ottawa Boat and Outdoor Show will have a Made in Canada platform at its show, and we are currently in the process of signing up vendors for that. We are also in the process, and very, very close, and I have to say, the folks over at the Toronto Sportsman Show have really opened the door to the Made in Canada tackle platform, and of course, all of our vendors. We've had some great discussion back and forth, and of course, pricing is the biggest issue. We want to make sure that it's affordable for you vendors, so we're working very hard to get it there. And Mike, the show director, is doing an admirable job to get us there. And he's actually proposed a really good site, really, really good area for the Made in Canada tackle show to be presented. So stay tuned, be patient. We'll get some of those announcements out, because I know I've had a lot of questions in regards to both shows. And there is another show that we are in the process of working with as well that kind of came out of nowhere, which was kind of cool. And I want to thank Kyle over at CanCast, because, of course, he's opened his doors to the Made in Canada platform as well. But I think with the Made in Canada, from Kyle's perspective, there's too much crossover. I don't know that it would work. We'd love to work with Kyle, and as I said, CanCast show is just the epitome of what a little show can grow into, and the fact that we've been a part of that and been spectators to watch it has truly been admiring and admirable, as well as honoring. So we are working with all the shows to try and get a platform through which some of you vendors who just don't have the means, we're trying to bring that to you. We're trying to give you the opportunity to get on a main stage, to rub shoulders with some of the elite in our industry. Because at the end of the day, I think we're all producing some really cool stuff out there. And if we're using it and it's being successful, then you know what? Let's promote the crap out of it. And why not now more than ever with everything that's going on in the world? But let's not discuss that. Let's have a look at the comments, just make sure I haven't Missed anything? How you doing, Mike? Nice to see you. Hey, I haven't seen this name. How you doing, Lexus? Nice to have you along. May, always a pleasure as well. Yeah. There's not enough money, I'll tell you. Great question, Luke. We're going to get to that. There is definitely hope, I would say, that we're going to be on the hard water before I'm going to say New Year's. I don't want to say Christmas. And the reason I'm saying that is because we got to pump the brakes a little. I know it's getting cold. I know everybody's chomping at the bit, but Jason and I will take some time to just remind you folks that, be cautious. Just be cautious. Jason, a pleasure as always to have you here with us. And of course, we have a very special show that's coming up this Wednesday. Jason's going to be a part of it with Aaron Dodds and the entire Kayak Bass Canada group, as it is their year-end award ceremony. And they've picked CFN to host it in a way. Really looking forward to this. So it's really going to be cool. 8:00 Wednesday. I'm going to be joined by my good buddy, Dan Bacon. And of course, Aaron Dodds and Jason Brock. Looking forward to that night because it should be a lot of fun. Probably a few takeaways and some things that I hope aren't recorded. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, with that note, it is time. Unfortunately, Jim is a little under the weather tonight, so he will not be joining us. Instead, we, of course, have Lawrence back, who has recovered from his flu, and he'll tell us all about that. And, of course, the one and only Jay Barnucz. We got Lawrence coming up right after this.
What is Flash Boost? Shimano designed innovative Flash Boost technology. It keeps flashing, which attracts fish whether in a pause or while retrieving. The mirror plate, which is fixed by a spring inside the body, vibrates with the lure action to generate diffuse reflection. Even if you stop the lure action, the inner plate will move and continue to flash, giving the lure a sense of life and inviting a fish bite. This is Flash Boost.
And even though we missed him, we never forgot him. Lawrence Gunther, how you doing, buddy? Nice to have you along.
Oh, man. Good to be back, buddy. Good to be back. And
it's good to have you back. Sounds like you're still fighting a little bit of what's left over, but tell us about the ordeal because it sounded like it really took your wind away.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm all set to get my COVID and flu vaccines. And then my cousin from Germany lands in over here for a little visit. And her husband's coughing up a storm.
Hey.
And 3 days after they leave. And we all come down with it. So, just looking at the symptoms and all that stuff, I was pretty sure it's that COVID thing that's been floating around Europe and it's coming over here that they're vaccinating for now. But 2 weeks, buddy, 2 weeks. And it's still sort of rattling around in my chest a little bit in my throat, but it's pretty much coming out. I'm pretty much done with it.
That's good, buddy. Well, you know what? We'll take you any way we can get you, but it's nice to hear that you're on the mend. Nonetheless. Lots happening in the world. We had an interesting discussion last Monday in regards to some of the reclamation of land and certain topics that are coming up. And Jay, I would have to say, gave me the best advice there was in regards to a certain issue that's going on with Rice Lake. Not to say that it's fake news by any means, because it very well could be going on, but unfortunately we haven't heard much since the posting. So perhaps, that is a story that went cold, or maybe there's not enough meat in it. But needless to say, the point I'm trying to make is there's so much information being bombarded on social media and the internet that we have to be cautious. And one thing that came across, and I made sure to qualify it by going through different other agencies or news media publications, but we got a bit of an issue on the East Coast when it comes to lobster. And one of the things that I saw mentioned in all the headlines, everywhere I read it, is that it's ripping small towns apart. Being part of a community that tries to bring people together, I hate hearing stuff like this. you, I know, have been following it, and I know you've got a little bit to talk about and discuss with us. So by all means, you take it from there.
Well, I'm from away, but I did have roots in Cape Breton for 14 years. I owned property out there and spent 3 to 4 months out there every year, and participated in the cod fishery, and until that shut down in '92. But a lot of my friends were lobster fishers. Our lobster fishers, became crab fishers. Still, want to pursue cod, and still, building boats and getting into bigger boats. But it's it's in a very impoverished part of Canada. Like, you think about 150 years ago, and Halifax was the industrial core of Canada, and then it went into the Great Lakes once they got the ability to move boats up the St. Lawrence River, and the industry moved there and along the St. Lawrence River and into the Great Lakes, and left Atlantic Canada behind, and the shipbuilding and all the other industry that was out there. And I was telling my kids, when I was in Cape Breton, they had coal mining, they had the steel mill, and they had lobster and cod and all the processing plants. And then, the coal mining shut down, the steel mill was closed down, the cod fishery was closed down. The only thing they had left was lobster. And really, that's all they have. I mean, yeah, crab came on, but you had to be a very lucky person to get a license to fish crab, and there's not many of those that were handed out, but the ones that got them did very well. But like I said, those were just a handful of licenses in comparison to everything else that was going on out there. It didn't turn the economy around. It certainly helped, contribute and squirt some money into the economy out there. But lobster is the only thing, right? That's in terms, if you making your living and you're holding your community together, and you're trying to keep that legacy going of 500 years of fishing history, as a settler to North America, that's it. That's all that's left is lobster.
It is, and of course we've talked about how they've reopened to a certain degree, or at least increased the catch for cod, and to say that is a positive for folks out east. But I have to ask, like, in the grand scheme of things, and you may have just mentioned, how significant is that in relation to what's going on with the lobster?
It's tiny, and they're already talking about reeling that back. They realize the numbers and the size of the cod that are swimming around out east. It's not growing. And where the big cod going? You got 5 million seals swimming around out there. There's some great white sharks now coming around to pick them off, but not to any great degree yet. It hasn't really put a dent into the seal population that needs to be put in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these seals have they have no enemies right now. They have no enemies. So you see 1,000 seals swimming across vast stretches of ocean to get from one fish stock to another, and they're just pounding them. They're pounding them. 20 the seal are eating 20 times more cod than are being caught by that very small commercial fishery that's going on there right now. 20 to 1. So it's insignificant. Lobster it's $1 billion. It's $1 billion on Atlantic Canada. It's $1 billion for a very, very economically depressed part of Canada. $1 billion is a huge number. Huge.
No, true enough. And one of the things too that it was interesting. It was an interesting video to watch. It was a documentary it's called "The Last Boat on the Lake," and it talks about the Great Lakes fishery, commercial fishery, and more so Lake Erie. I think it was more orientated towards Lake Erie. But you hear some of the guests that they have in this documentary talking about, how as a parent, as a father, how do I pass down this to my child, my son, my daughter, whoever? At the end of the day, we're not sure what the future is going to be when it comes to commercial angling. We certainly don't know what the markets are going to dictate the price and how, is it going to be feasible? Is this something that can be sustained? I mean, we know that there's a great commercial fishery out on Lake Erie, but market prices unfortunately dictate a lot of what goes on in that industry. And unfortunately, who knows is the best way to answer any of the questions when it comes to what's going forward and how things are going to look in terms of a playing field for all these commercial anglers. But it's a dying art. And I know out east, there isn't really a lot of other options for these people to do. Is it, I'm going to go out on a limb and ask you this, Lawrence, with everything that is unfortunately deflating the commercial fishing industry, and we can list a whole list of reasons why. Are we getting back to the grassroots of commercial fishing? And when I say that, are we going to get back to those one-man, two-man boats going out and just picking what they can for the day, and whether they get their quota or they're not, they're just paying their bill? Like, where is this going to go in the future?
Well, a couple things, and first off, I'll mention is, my friend, she's the one who made that documentary, Last Boat on the Lake. I've had her on the podcast a bunch of times. We were working on some papers together, and she's now at Dalhousie University. But what she pointed out to me is that those fishing fleets, they're owned by third, fourth generation Canadians, but those boats are all staffed by mostly illegal aliens out of South America. Right? Not many people want to work on that in those kind of conditions. It's hard work. The weather is not great. You're boiling, or you're freezing, or you're sick because you're getting thrown around. And you're 28 times more likely to be injured or killed fishing than any other profession in the United States and Canada. 28 times more likely to be maimed or killed by fishing. I mean, wow. Deadliest catch. They call it that for a reason, and that's right on Lake Erie and Lake Ontario and the Great Lakes as well, right? It's tough, dangerous work. Now, so you got a fishery on the Great Lakes, a commercial fishery that's worth maybe $350 million a year. It's not much, but it's still considered the most valuable fishery in the world, freshwater fishery in the world, and but it's plagued by a lack of interest. People who just don't want to, have that profession, don't see that as a viable profession for their choosing. They go in other directions where they can make more money for less risk and less exposure to inclement weather and less chances of, it's fickle too, right? You have seasons, you have, there's times when you can't fish, so you're without money. But then you go to Atlantic Canada, you got no choices. If your choices are head out, up to the Arctic or out to Alberta and work in the oil patch, you don't have a lot of choices. Yeah. If you want to stay in Atlantic Canada, there's not many choices you got to in terms of making a living. So you get out there and you do it and you make that money. And like I said, it's a $1 billion lobster industry. And then you add on top of that they estimate 1/3 of the value of that industry is being harvested illegally and sold illegally to, large scale criminal organizations that are laundering drug money. So they come up here with their dirty money, cash, in trucks, in refrigerator trucks, and they hand that dirty money off to these lobster fishers, who hand them beautiful, fresh lobster that they take back down to the States. And now that money has been laundered. It's been, it was drug money that they, had. What are you going to do with drug money? A whole bunch of cash, and they've turned it into lobster that they can sell to restaurants. So it's a laundering. They don't mind if they pay a little bit less or a little bit more. They don't care. If they're laundering money, they'll pay the price because they're not paying taxes on it. So, and they need to launder it. So these lobster fishers saying, you know what, I'll take that. Thank you very much. So you got that going on. And now
Well,
they're
I
cracking down
mean,
on that,
regardless
right?
of the seals, or okay,
Yeah.
now lobster, I don't know how many lobsters a seal eats, but that in itself, right there, is that's an issue that certainly we can't come up with a remedy here on this show. But um, I I I had an inkling that there may be some questionable conduct going on, obviously when you're in a situation where you're out busting your hump every single day, and I get it, they're putting their lives on the line, as you mentioned. Can we skim a little bit off the top? Can we make a little bit more than? But yeah, dealing with a criminal element like that, I don't see that as the
No one
resolve.
was looking. No one was looking. No one was paying attention, and it was allowed to fester, and it was allowed to take a grip. And then the worst thing is, you have a community, where you need to work for 10 weeks a year, and then you can collect 42 weeks of unemployment. Right? That's all it takes to get your unemployment for the year. Is you need to have 10 weeks of documented employment in the land of Canada to get 42 weeks of unemployment insurance every year. And then you got all this time on your hands where, you're supposed to be looking for work, but there's no work, or you're just taking a little work under the table, but you got cash coming in, and you got this illegal cash as well that are coming up from drug dealers, and you got drugs coming in. And I tell you, you think we have problems in big cities like Toronto and Ottawa and Vancouver of drug addiction and homelessness and overdosing. Atlantic Canada, you got the levels of addiction, of drug abuse in Atlantic Canada and these small communities now is just extraordinary, absolutely over the top. And you got people going out on these boats for 2-3 days at a time. It's very boring work. No one's looking, and they bring drugs with them, and they're doing drugs when they're not working, and drugs are being sold, and they're killing time. They're killing time, just getting stoned, and it's deteriorating the fabric of society. Your children and your grandchildren, what kind of life are you showing them, right? They see all that. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy in so many ways. You say, well, what about tourism? Look, you go out to Atlantic Canada, and you go July and August, which could be pretty nice. The first 2 weeks in July are normally cold and rainy. The last 2 weeks of August are cool. In the September or October, you got the change of leaves, so there's some color there for senior citizens who come. But that's it, right? You got 3 months maybe of tourism. You want to invest in a tourism business out there and then operate for 2 or 3 months a year and then shut it the 8-9 months a year. How do you make a living doing that? How do you pay your loans off? So there's no real simple solutions, but clamping down on the crime and it is absolutely essential, because it's become a lawless, drug-riddled part of Canada, and it's tragic. It's tragic.
Well, it is, and you hear of the East Coast, you hear of friendly natured individuals that are open up their homes to people. We've seen documentaries when 9/11 happened and various other situations where our Eastern folks have really stepped up. So I certainly don't want to paint all of our Eastern people with that brush, but we've talked about the whole glass eel situation, and let's be honest, like that is borderline organized crime from some of the stuff that you hear, and I'm not. It's alleged because I don't know, and I'm only looking from the outside in. But yeah, there is a lot of, like, when you hear people having their lives threatened over a glass seal, things are out of whack. If you're telling me that they're selling anything illegally and doing so for the sake of laundering drug money, we got a deeper problem than angling. There's a bigger issue here that angling is only a small part of, but is certainly being used as a doormat, unfortunately, for people to
And
move
then,
ahead
and
in
then
life.
you add into that this constant, cultural conflict between indigenous fishers who won the right to go out and earn a moderate livelihood, and their communities who want to sort of manage on how that unfolds, and trying to most of them are working with DFO to get licenses and to participate in the seasonal fisheries, and there's a handful that don't, but that's all you hear about. You hear about these cultural battles between the indigenous and the non-indigenous, and pointing fingers, who's ruining it for the next guy. And then you find out that this whole ugly underbelly is going on out there at the same time, of all this criminality. And you think, this is really, come on, this is 10 times, 20 times worse than a handful of indigenous fishers putting a handful of lobster ponds out there out of season. This is it just makes you think, what the hell, like, who the hell, it's lawlessness, and you expect these people, indigenous people, to play by the rules, and then you got a third of the whole lobster industry that's not playing by the rules and just fishing illegally. You think, people shouldn't be throwing rocks when they're living in glass houses. It's just ridiculous. It needs to get sorted out. There needs to be, some law brought into what become a lawless part of Canada for many people, and families are suffering.
Well, as Blake has reminded us, unfortunately, some of these issues are very much like an onion, as there's so many layers. And you're right, Blake. I mean, Blake asked what's going on, or what's the latest with Rice Lake. As we discussed last week, Blake, with everything that's gone on there, and yes, there was a proclamation made in a local news. Not really sure about the news agency that published it. But needless to say, we are trying to do our homework. There are, it seems to be anyway, a lot of facets, as you mentioned, to this story. Some have already existed. Some are just reoccurring now because of what's going on across Canada. But at the end of the day, Blake, we're keeping an eye on it because, as I said, we fight very hard to voice our concerns when it comes to the accessibility to angling. And unfortunately, we're going to do our very best to keep that voice and grow that voice as loud as we possibly can. But yeah, it is concerning. We've talked about Richmond, we've talked about out west, and everything that's going on there. The struggles that provincial premiers are having with our prime minister and trade and industry growth and all that. So it's going to be interesting to see where angling and commercial angling sort of fall in correspondence with all of these issues, but we'll do our best to stay on top of it.
You're talking about Rice Lake and the promote the idea of it becoming a legal entity.
Yes.
Yeah. We've had the one incident of that already in Canada, right? A river in Quebec.
Yeah.
That flows without any restriction. It's completely still one of the last remaining natural rivers that flows from beginning to end without any sort of impediment. And they said, let's recognize this as an entity. It may sound bizarre. It may sound, like it was a socialism. Is this communism? What the hell is this? Environmentalism to the extreme. But if you think about corporations have been legal entities ever since we started doing incorporations, right? Ever since we started incorporating companies, we took a company and we said, okay, now this company is a legal entity and it has a right to survive, it has a right to live without being harassed, it has a right to carry on without being, exploited or destroyed or, traded illegally. And it's interesting that corporations have this legal, the same status as a human being in many ways. And now we have a handful of people who think, well, you know what? Maybe we should give a lake or a river this sort of status that you're a living, breathing, thing that, you know, you have a right to exist. And it's not just whoever shows up first and, you know, plants a flag and buys the land and says, now I own this. I can do whatever the frig I want. Get off my property. You know, maybe.
Are we hiding behind the premise of the argument by saying, you know, we're doing this to protect the lake? Are we hiding behind that because we have ulterior motives? Now, I'm just going to say allegedly, because again, I don't know all the facts and I don't know all the issues in regards to any of all this, and I'm learning as we go. But are we hiding behind something to try and gain a certain ulterior motive?
Well, I know a friend of mine. He started the living river movement in the United States, and he's trying to get rivers identified as legal entities in the United States. And he's just a wonderful guy, just a wonderful man, and his group is just they're amazing people, and they're not anti-angling in any sense, shape, or form. What they are is, you know, we don't want some industry moving in and just sort of squashing this river, squashing this lake, and just laying waste to it.
Right.
And because there's too many people who are connected to this body of water in very profound ways that go back generations. And it's all part of a living organism in a sense, right? That I depend on you, you depend on me. Together, we can be amazing for many more generations to come. We just have to take care of each other. That's sort of the idea, and not that idea where you have these communities, these coastal communities, and the water and the animals that live in that water. That there's this circle of life, and there's one health connection between it all, and that together, you know, we stand divided, we fall, and that can be just totally overlooked, totally ignored by some corporation that just says, you know what, no, we're coming in, we're going to do something else here now. Sorry, bye. And that's sort of what they're saying is, no, you know, you can't just come in and just push us out. You can't just push us out and just have your way with it. And because you're a legal entity, you're a legal corporation, and this river is not, or this lake is not, so therefore you can do to it what you want, and then what do we have to protect it, right? Some environmental organization that's going to do a review of your business plan before it goes ahead. Look, I'm not against business, and I'm not against, you know, we need capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I lived in Sweden. I lived in a social democracy for a year. I saw these weaknesses. I spent, you know, months in Russia and the USSR before the wall came down. And then after the wall came down as an advisor to the Lithuanian government trying to get their communist shit sorted out, and saw the horrific nastiness of communism. You know, what we got here, capitalism and entrepreneurialism, man, we're so blessed. We're so blessed. And we need to embrace entrepreneurs and you know, that's how Canada's built on.
Yeah.
But we do have to say that, you know, we also have these rivers and these lakes that we don't want to have destroyed over and over and over again. Look, we're just getting the Great Lakes dug out of the shitstorm that happened during the Industrial Revolution, you know, industrialization. We're just getting that cleaned up, and the lakes have never been better. In 150 years, they've never been better. And do we want to see it all go south again if a whole nother swath of industry moves on to those shores and starts dumping? You know, we see some of that already. And, you know, we need to have, it can't just be a handful of environmentalists and a handful of anglers that are saying, hey, stop fucking it up. Stop screwing up the lake.
I think the issue is, you know, or at least the underlying issue these days is the minute you have a strong opinion about something, all of a sudden you become a radical.
Yeah.
Are you a radical because you want to drink clean water? Are you a radical because you want great fishing? Are you a radical because you want commercial fishing to prosper in conjunction with recreational angling? Are you a radical because of that? No, I don't believe you are. I don't believe you are, and I believe that we say enough of it and we preach enough of it here on CFN that I would like to think that we're not radicals. We just all have a common passion, a common goal. We all want to see clean drinking water. We all want to see trophy fisheries. We all want to see productive fisheries for table fare. Everybody has a right to make a living here in this country, because that is the capitalist environment and industry and social society that we live in. So at the end of the day, we want all these things. We just got to find a way so that it all fits properly. We can't have too much of one thing and not enough of another. So we got to find, as they always say, a balance. And I'm not sure how we're doing that. I'm not sure how well it's going, especially recently. But
I tell you, I'm just saying, don't go running from this idea of giving lakes and rivers legal status. It's not the end of fishing. It's not the end of boating, canoeing, vacationing. It's not the end of any of that. It's just a way of saying, hey, when you do all this stuff, you got to respect the nature that you're doing it with, and you got to pay some attention here that you're not just trashing the place. We see too much trash in the place going on, right? And that's been a bit of a history here for big industry that just come in, roll into Canada, roll through, vacuum up everything they can and sell it and move on. And that's been Canada, right? Starting with the beaver and the buffalo and on, right? Trees and oil and gas and coal. And, we see this it's created jobs and it's created wealth in this country and it's created Canada. But it doesn't have to be just, some giant industry just having its way without any sort of restrictions at all in terms of the damage that they're causing, and the trash that they leave behind that we have to clean up. No one wants to pick up the fishing line and the garbage on the side of a river. And God, we hear so much about that all the time in the news, right? But how often do we hear about large industry just polluting the shit out of our rivers and lakes? And people say, well, it's their jobs, it's necessary, it's a necessary evil, or we just turn a blind eye to it because we want the jobs and so on. But then we get left holding the bag to clean it all up. And the industry's gone, moved on, and taxpayers are paying for the bill to clean it up.
But and really, is it just taxpayer, or is it the next generation of taxpayers that really had no hand in any of this that we're discussing? That's the real shame, is that we're passing this poor chain of decision making on to our next generations. And very apologetic. I feel ashamed at times, but I feel very proud of what we try to do here to educate the masses. And on that, I will say, before we move on, Lawrence, I do know that you probably have a whole stack of stuff that you wanted to talk about that you've been storing up in the last 2 weeks. So if there's anything else you wanted to mention, I'll let you do now, because believe it or not, dude, our half hour is almost done.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're putting some news together. Tomorrow is Giving Tuesday, whatever the hell that means. It's like one day a year you give to a charity. It's something to think about. If there's a charity that you care about, and we're at Bluefish Canada, we're lucky. We get a lot of just amazing, Scotty. You hear from these families, Uncle Buck and Dad, or died. They loved fishing, and we want to, instead of flowers, we want to give something to what Dad loved and the future, so his grandchildren can do it too, and his passion can be carried on, right? And we get some of those legacy gifts at Bluefish Canada, and just because we love fishing and we love fish, and there's so many people out there who do. 1 in 10 adult Canadians, like people over 16, fish. 1 in 10. Buy licenses and go fishing. And it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. A million hours of fishing time, a million days of fishing time on Lake Ontario alone every year, just from Ontario resident anglers, not tourists, just people who live in Ontario. Put a million days of fishing on Lake Ontario, just Lake Ontario itself.
It is amazing. And it's, what's really cool too is we're starting to see, and it's always been there, but I would say more so now than before, marketing is geared towards the outdoors. A recent car commercial that just came on, you have the two young girls, what look to be rainbow trout. I'd like to think they bought them in a store, because they don't look like they came from the wild. But anyway, regardless, there's dad holding a little fish, and then the two daughters are holding these two great big rainbows. But the fact that it is part of marketing, that it is actually in our advertising, and unfortunately, we've all grown up with it. Subtle imagery, subtle, messaging is what happens. And a snapshot of that commercial, I have to say, the only thing I remember is the dad holding up the little fish and his two daughters holding up the larger fish. I don't even know what brand of car it was. It doesn't even matter. But the fact that fishing is being promoted is something that I got drawn into right away, and I'm so glad for that.
Earth Rangers is an amazing charity with over 400,000 kids from Ontario and Quebec signed up on their beautiful app, and they go out there and do all sorts of great work to improve nature, families with their children doing all these amazing things. And then the man behind Earth Rangers, I reached out to him and I said, hey, you should put some fishing in there, so how to do fishing sustainably. And he goes, oh no, he said, we're promoting environmentalism. And then another year I meet him up with again, I tell him again, and year goes by, and then he comes to me and he calls me up. He said, Lawrence, he said, we launched that new app. We spent $100,000 building this app, and it's super popular, but we have families saying, hey, we did the shoreline cleanup on the stream. Yeah. My kids want to catch a fish. Can we catch a fish? Do you mind? So we work with them and, promoting sustainable fishing for these families. You see these connections happening, right, between environmentalism and angling. It's not like it was 10, 15 years ago where the environmentalists were hell-bent on shutting down fishing. Yeah, there's a handful of nut jobs out there that still feel that way. And there's a lot of animal protection organizations that definitely believe in veganism and that's fine. That's fine if they want to be a vegan and and they want to protect animals. That's fine. But fishing is a connection to nature, and it builds powerful bonds between people and these fish and the rivers and lakes they live in, where it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. Agreed. Absolutely, man.
Agreed, buddy. Well, listen, as always, it's glad to have you. It's more so now that you've been gone the last couple of weeks that we're really happy to see you, because it means that you're on the mend.
Yep.
But keep your nose to the grindstone. We love what you come up with in terms of fishing news and how it relates to us and how we should be involved, just as we discussed tonight, because there are certain things that we need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we see positive change in the future.
I agree, man. And together, we share information, kick around ideas and scratch our heads and think, but what about, and did you're a little nuts on this one. And this is good. It's good that we have these back and forths, and I love it. Love it. 100%. Love the feedback.
Right on, brother. Well, you have yourself a great week, and we will reconnect here, not only with fishing and nature, but with each other next Monday, my friend.
Sounds good.
All right, dude. You take care of yourself. We got Jay Barnucz coming up right after a word from his sponsor.
The Finisher is one of the most unique baits I've ever seen.
This bait is designed to fish for forward-facing sonar, and you work it with quick, snappy strokes with a rod tip on the semi-slack line to give it a nice side-to-side action.
The lateral movement is insane.
It may go right twice, then left, then up, then down. I mean, it's all over the place.
ice, not only can you cast it out in front of the boat and fish it back towards you, you can also fish it vertically, so it allows you to change on the fly.
The thing that I really like about this bait is some of these fish are suspended. We might be in 30 to 35 feet of water. These fish might be 10 feet off the bottom. And this thing sinks a little bit slower than your typical real heavy glide baits. But what it allows you to do is keep the bait above those suspended fish.
You see a fish on your sonar and it might be out there 80, 90, 100 feet. This thing casts like a little bullet.
It also gets down to the fish very fast because it tends to tilt nose down and it sinks.
I can keep it down there in the strike zone and work it side to side, super aggressive. Man, it generates a bunch of bites.
It really is amazing at getting fish to react that you would not catch otherwise.
Jay Dog's in the house. How you doing, Jay?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Living the dream, as they say. Living the dream. Jay, we have some folks that are getting anxious for ice fishing, and I can totally understand why. If we could, we'll just go back over the past week that was. It all started with the incredible winds, whether you were on Lake Huron, Lake Superior, or Lake Erie especially. This is what we saw and have been seeing probably for, 5 straight days, Jay, roughly?
Yeah, more or less.
More or less 5 days. And then, of course, after that, this is what transpired. And you could speak to this, being someone that avidly visits Long Point. The Inner Bay, have you ever seen it this dry?
No. And now we've had some low water this year, and we'll talk about some more of that. But like that's some of that stuff right there. That's where I fish in the summer for largemouth. A lot of that. And
incredible.
Just so folks know, so the Inner Bay of Long Point is a shallow bay right about the middle of Long Point. And the winds we had this week just pushed that water out. Now on the other side of the lake, so that was on the south shore of Long Point Bay, I'm going to guess based on what the background looked like. In Turkey Point, which is on the north side, there was like the water level was up over the docks, right? So it literally pushes the water. And we've been doing some research down in Long Point for about 15 years, and what we believe is happening down there is these sesh events actually spread the fish around, because we go into some of these ponds. So Long Point is a sand spit, and there's a lot of sand dunes, and there's ponds in between the dunes. And what we see is fish in these ponds, and we always wondered, how do these fish get into some of these isolated ponds? And we think what's happening is these sesh events are literally causing fish to be moved around into ponds, then they become trapped, or push fish out of ponds entirely. And I'm sure that some fish become trapped in those ponds, but that's Port Rowan right there. So Port Rowan is, again, these areas are always shallow. You're talking 3 to 4 feet, maybe 4 to 5 feet at best, but it's so rare to see that much water outside of Port Rowan. I've never seen Port Rowan that low. That's actually one of the access points that we use for ice fishing on Long Point. And typically, even in the ice, it's at least 3 to 4 feet deep there as you work at the shore, and then you work your way up. But right there, you can see it's basically mud. So we had some incredible winds this week. I saw some stats like down at I forget the guy's name. He does this podcast called Big Water Podcast, and he does a lot of walleye fishing. And he was out on the flats down near like Toledo, and he was out picking up fishing lures looked like you're going out clam digging out in Nova Scotia or New Brunswick. It was pretty impressive how that water pushed. Now, all that water's got to go somewhere, and it pushed it. A lot of those winds were westerly, and it pushed it down towards Buffalo, where they saw major, they actually had some shoreline flooding issues going on. So it's just incredible weather this week. But a lot of that, and I'm going to see if I can actually share this. This will work. So a lot of that is because of this system. I'm going to share a picture here. So this is what's happening right now with what's called the polar vortex. Okay, so that major shift, that major system that we got at the end of last week into the weekend, and we saw the temperatures just go for a real nosedive. So this is the polar vortex here. Now, there was a great tweet today by Chris Murphy. If anyone follows weather meteorologists, you got to follow Chris Murphy. One, Chris is great when it comes to weather forecasting, is on the Weather Network all the time. Two, the dude fishes. He loves fishing. I see Chris all the time at the trade shows. I talk weather and fishing with him, and I get a lot of my information from what he shares on social media, especially on Twitter. And so what this is from the Weather Network. And you'll see here, typically this polar vortex, this cold air is usually trapped over top of the Arctic here, okay? And there's a similar vortex over the South Pole. Polar vortexes occur all the time, okay? They're always there. It's not like a hurricane, or it's not like, systems like that come and go. The polar vortex is always over the poles. But what happens is that it's a high pressure system, so it's a very solid system. When we get some of these low pressure systems, think of it as a coat of armor, and it breaks it down and it causes it to slide south. And so what you see here is this is some of the temperature anomalies that we're seeing here. And so this isn't temperature. This is zero is your seasonal values for this time of year. Okay. So as you can see here, as you slide, I'm sliding my cursor here left to right. When you get into those blues and purples, that's below seasonal temperatures, okay? And then over here is above seasonal. So we're seeing this major change. And even, dude, today driving to work, there's ice on the irrigation ponds in the farmers' fields. And it's December the 1st. It's incredible. We'll talk about ice fishing in a minute, but what this is setting us up for is potentially decent ice fishing season if this cold weather persists, which it looks like it's going to persist for the next 2 weeks, even down here in southwestern Ontario. And so all these ponds and these small lakes are losing their heat units. They're losing heat, and that's going to cause it to freeze up faster. And if we get some mild nights, we're probably going to see ice taking form and staying. And it doesn't mean it'll be safe to walk on, but it won't take as much later in the winter as we get into the end of December and into January. It won't take as much sort of temperature shifts for that ice to solid up and become walkable. It's pretty amazing.
It is. Yeah. It is a phenomenon of weather. And of course, we are in a La Nina year, which is a very weak La Nina, because at some point we're going to be in a holding pattern. Because we're not going to have a lot of influence from the Pacific, which, of course, is what generates and steers a lot of our weather. But to your point, we had this phenomenon, this wind, this storm that came through. And, of course, the dreaded lake effect snow machine started up. And before we do talk about, because this is my fear, this is what I know Big Jim and I talk about this at great length. I know you and I have talked as well, Jay. But you get this sense that because there's snow on the ground, immediately any water is frozen and it's safe. But before we get to that, because I think it's important that we do bring it up, something that I noticed, and I don't want you guys, you folks, to pay too much attention to the numbers, because the numbers are in imperial. But just in case anybody doesn't understand how barometric pressure affects fish, more so bass, I would say, than any other fish. But if you don't understand it, it's very well explained here.
I'm understanding barometric pressure, 29.8, 30.2, but what about how fast it changes? Does that matter? Oh, absolutely. The rate of the change is just as important as the numbers itself. Think about how your ears pop on a plane. The fish can feel that, but in their entire body. So it drops quickly before a storm. They're feeding like crazy. The rapid drop from 30.2 to 29.7 is going to change everything. A front's moving in, and they're going to feed up before things get weird. I'm guessing it rises after the storm then. High pressure locks them down. 30.3 and up is going to be clear skies, calm day, pretty day for you, but terrible mood for fishing. That's when you want to go finesse with Texas rig, Ned rigs, and small baits. And steady pressure? That's your pattern days. 29.9 to 30.1, stable for 2 or 3 days. You can pattern them easy and they're predictable. So low means go, high means slow. Exactly. Watch the numbers, not just the clouds. You'll start fishing ahead of the weather instead of reacting to it.
It's a great video. I like his explanation.
Yeah.
So, putting this into our metric system, and just to recap what he talked about, a flat barometer or one that is slowly rising is not great fishing, but it's steady fishing. Would you agree, Jay?
Yeah, I agree. And there's been some talk about the actual real impact of barometric pressure on fish, and I think the jury's out a little bit on it, but I do think it plays an influence, and what weather's coming in and how that impacts your fishing. Like I've been saying on this show, and I followed this for years, when you get these low pressure systems come in, especially before a high pressure system comes in, because remember, these pressure systems are not forever. Like you're going to go through, just like in that chart you go through waves of pressure, and you'll get, typically like in the summer, you'll get 2 or 3 days of high pressure, and then you'll get a storm. Thunderstorm comes in, a low pressure comes in, and usually fish will bite really well right before that low pressure comes in. And I've always found that in the wintertime, and I don't know why this is for me personally, but a lot of the barometric weather that I pay attention to is typically in the winter, because just before we typically get snowfall, you'll see the barometric pressure drop. And it's usually right before we get the snowstorm that the fish will feed up a lot. And a lot of my best fishing, whether it be for walleye or for yellow perch or for crappie, which is the species I like to target the most, it typically happens right before or as that pressure is dropping. Once the pressure starts to rise, and once it's rising and it stays high, that's when the bite can really slow down. It doesn't mean the fish won't bite. It just means you got to change your approach. But for me, I like to go out, like, so on the water, typically those low pressure systems are around big wind events. And so those aren't always good on water, because when you're dealing with wind in boats, not just kayaks, but even normal fishing boats, it's hard to fish in that kind of weather. But what I've found is under the ice, those wind events don't impact us as much, right? So I can get out on the lake when it, as long as it's not a real stiff wind, where I'm worried about my stuff blowing away, that's when I'll target. So I like to look at the forecast coming up through the week, and I'll okay, I want to get out, instead of going for the whole day. I know I can only get out for a couple hours here and there. I will target my times around when those low pressure systems are coming in. So, and when low pressure systems are coming in, especially when it's around nightfall, like sunset or a sunrise, man, the fishing can be really good. So I encourage anglers to think about those low pressures, get to know. I know Weather Underground, that website actually has a cool feature where you can look at the 10-day forecast, and it'll show you the forecasted barometric trends. And I will literally look at, and I actually have a couple of buddies who spend more time ice fishing than I do because they live further north, and they've tested this, and they're big on that Weather Underground trend graph. And they'll look at it and they'll be like, hey, what are you doing on Tuesday? You should come up, because it looks like we're going to get a good bite on Tuesday night, because there's a snowstorm coming in. The barometric pressure, so you get snow falling, barometric pressure is dropping right around sunrise or sunset, and that can be just lights out good fishing, better than normal. Now, when's the best time to go fishing? Go when you can, man. Don't base it on the weather. You should always go when you can. But it does, I think barometric pressure helps, and it's another tool in the toolbox that we can think about.
100%. I will agree with you. I would say probably not my largest fish have come on days like this.
Yeah.
But some of the most productive days where you're getting good numbers of fish have certainly come on days like this. And I hate to say it, there is something nostalgic for me anyway, because I really grew up ice fishing more so than anything else. That on those days it snows, I don't know, man, it brings you back. It brings you back to
it really
a time
it does,
that
man.
It all made sense.
It's like the fish, and I can't base any scientific reason for this, but it's like the fish are just more active on those low pressure days. And so more fish are coming through, more fish are looking at your baits. And again, a lot of this is ice fishing related because again, when those big storms are happening in the summer, I'm probably not on the water. Like I'm probably fishing up to the storm, but not during the storm, right? Whereas ice fishing, I will fish through that bad weather. You know, again, as long as it's not windy enough that one, my craft's going to blow away, or two, I still got to get home safe. So there's been times, you know, where some of those Bay of Quinte trips where you're out there and you're sitting off of like Deserano or Belleville, and all of a sudden it's like you're getting notifications like, oh, they're going to close the 401 because but that's sometimes the best fishing. I'm not encouraging people to get stuck in that weather, but you got to really think about that. Yeah, freezing rain, good call, Mike. Like there's a classic low pressure. That's another low pressure scenario during, you know, and even when there's just plain snow falling, like steelheading during snowfall, as romantic as that looks, it can actually be really good fishing because those fish are going to bite. Sometimes those fish are always there. You just have to be there at that right time, and they become active all of a sudden. It's pretty wild.
It is very, very true. And yes, George, some of us do not get the opportunity to choose which day is best. Unfortunately, it's chosen for us. Now, I noticed that you have a map up here, Jay, that you wanted to share.
Yeah, this came out today, and this is from Environment Canada. And this is kind of a cool map, and it kind of puts down all the crap I've been complaining about when it comes to our Southern Ontario, our November. And I keep saying how we haven't had enough rain. Look at this here. This is Hamilton, Southern Ontario. Our average rainfall for the last, 30 years has been 74.4 millimeters for the month of November. Mm-hmm. And this year we only got 1/3 of that. One-third of that rain. Yeah. That's even up here, up in Wyerton, which is like northern, like Georgian Bay. So like it would kind of cover off those Georgian Bay and Lake Huron trips. Like half the rainfall for 1 month. And considering we had such low water through the summer and through October, boy, this drought is just, I'd say now we're back up to normal flows, but we're not getting those peak flows that are really going to bring those fish in. So I'm hoping that now what could happen is some of this lake effect snow, as long as we get a little bit of melt, it's going to help the steelheaders out quite a bit. But I'm not seeing a lot of volume of snow. I'm seeing a lot of 5 to 10 centimeter days over the next few days. But if that piles up, and we do get some warm weather, a little bit of warm. I'm not calling for double digits here, but just stay above zero for a couple of days. Sometimes you'll start getting that snow melt. And now snow melt can work against steelheaders too, because snow melt can actually lower the water temperature. Okay, it won't get below zero, but the warmer the water, the more active the steelhead. So snow melt is not the best kind of precipitation, but it's better than not getting precipitation, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, so
100%.
Yeah.
Some great numbers shared there. And of course, as always, Jay, you keep us in the know. And Joe is able to attribute it and associate it to what goes on in his backyard, the beloved French River.
Yeah.
I will say this spring we saw a drastic change, which I think had a lot to do with the location of the walleye. I mean, it had gone up drastically just before I would say the end of or the opening of walleye season on the French River. It went from 6 to 7 feet higher than it was 2 weeks later, where it had dropped that same amount. Fish, let's face it, they're not quick to adapt. They have to at some point, but when you see that kind of change in fluctuation in water temperature, as we saw in Lake Erie this past week, it is going to have a dramatic effect on where fish populate.
Yeah, it will. And and what I think what's incredible is just seeing where we're trending the next couple of weeks in December. And again, I'm not trying to sound negative. I think more what I'm trying to say is, here's what you're faced with. If people want to get out fishing, here's what you got to deal with. And we're going to dealing with cold. So, get out your base layers, get out your warm clothes. There's good fishing to be had. And like, for example, a lot of the rivers I fish for steelhead, they don't peak the good runs don't come in until December. And so we're just getting into that good time of year. So I'm just hoping that we don't get into like really cold double-digit temperatures, because I've fished in that cold, and I'll do it again if I have to, but it is not comfortable to do that. But as I get older, man, I rely a lot more on those hot packs. Those hot packs never used to get much use, but I got to say, I was out in the field last week for a couple of days collecting our samples and wrapping up our field season, because where we had to sample in London area, we were dodging snow squalls for 2 weeks, where I didn't want to go off trudging through snow. I'm not a fair weather worker, but damn, when you're getting a foot of snow and I have to transport samples from London to the lab in Peterborough, that is a long drive in bad weather. So we got a window last week. Actually, we went out Wednesday. We drove down to London, and that was when the windstorm just started. You and Jim were messaging. We were all group chatting, but I was driving through all that wind. I was in it, and then when we got up to collect our samples Thursday morning, man, it was winds gusting 80 kilometers an hour in the bush. Like you can hear the trees, like, banging and crashing. And I'm like, they joke about widowmakers. If anyone knows what that is, you don't want to come across those widowmakers. And I don't like it. Anyways, we got our samples and we booked it to Peterborough, and where the M&R lab is. And man, we were traveling across that corridor 407 in the big truck, and the like we're hanging on. That we didn't have any ice on the roads until I got home. Like literally, I avoided bad weather all day, and then on our way home on Thursday, I left Burlington, and it was a little busy Thursday night around 7. And then as I got to Brantford, all that snow we got wasn't much, started to freeze on the roads, and I saw a few headlights and taillights like heading into the ditch. So just drive slow and take it easy. I'm glad that field season is done. Actually, I went out today and I pulled my waders out of the truck, and they were all like frozen in like a ball. You know what I mean? So they're drying in my garage now, all my work stuff. And it's hard. I don't know about you, man, but you work outdoors, and one of my biggest pet peeves is leaving gear maintenance too long. And now I got to go outside and work I don't mind fishing in the cold, but dude, I hate working in the cold. I'll do it, but I don't like it. And when everything's freezing up and icing up on you, I can't believe it's December 1st and we're dealing with that, but that's what it is this year. So,
and I will say this, one of the positives, if you will, of working outside is you understand the need to prepare. So as the temperatures start to get colder, the days get shorter, and you have that, 4-letter word that you keep hearing, prognosticators mention every once in a while. Yeah, you learn quickly to adapt and get ready. But with that being said, of course, and this has been our biggest fear, and this is something before we end your segment, Jay, and our live for tonight. Even with all this snow, folks, and I know you're chomping at the bit, Jay, and I mentioned that, we both know some folks that are wanting to get out ice fishing, perhaps as early as this weekend. And although they're having great success out west right now with First Ice, and I've seen lots of great pictures come across our CFN newswire. I have to say, and I know, Jay, you're going to reemphasize this, not everything is frozen yet. Not everything is safe. And what you decide as safe ice is truly a personal thing. We can sit here and tell you it's 4 inches before you walk on it, this, that, and everything else. What I am starting to see is a bit of a trend where First Ice could potentially be someone's last ice. And please don't make a mistake.
Yeah, like guys are getting anxious. I think, I know some guys that are going to go out, and to be honest, like if you can get a -10 night, once a lake is locked up, so I'm thinking smaller lakes, not big ones, small lakes, once they're locked up, and every day that goes by where it's -10 at night and doesn't go above 0, you can get up to 1 inch per night. Mm-hmm. So there is potential for some listeners who are in sort of that Algonquin Park latitude, that looking at the long range forecast, it's possible that there might be, a good 4 or 5 inches of ice within the next week if these temperatures stay the same. Because even down here, what are our daytime highs going to be, Scotty? Like 2 or 3 degrees at the most. And then at night, we're going down to -6, -5. -5 will make ice. It makes half an inch a night. It's kind of, it's, and I'm not sure what the physics is for that -10, but I know from what I've read, -10 is like the magic number where you get 1 inch per night, as long as there's no wind to break up that ice and no rain and no snowpack. Snow insulates. So there's all these variables, right? This is why I never went into, when I was early in my schooling days, I loved hydrology and geomorphology, like that sort of physical geography realm, as much as I loved ecology and fish and that.
Yep.
But dude, the math involved in geomorphology and hydrology, it is not my forte. It was way too advanced for me. It kind of ruined me in a way, but I love trying to decipher these hydrologic models. And when you get talking with ice, there's so many variables. What I'm saying is just be careful out there. I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, we'll start doing some more ice safety talks. And, your spud is your friend. There's, in fact, listen, great night. If anyone's on the fence about buying a floater suit or even like one of the new ice suits out there with flotation assist, go do it tonight. Cyber Monday. Everything's on sale right now. I heard the average price for some of this, like some models, like 30% off. Now, these aren't cheap things, but man, it's a buy once, cry once kind of thing, right? So everyone should consider getting in on it. And just take your time, be patient. We got lots of time. And I saw George's comment about lake effect snow. We need ice just to freeze up the lakes so that we don't have lake effect snow. We had this long hot summer and those lakes are still open. And as long as we get this cold wind moving water or pushing water inland off those lakes, man, we are going to have a hell of a time for those folks living close to our Great Lakes, but we'll see. So
100%.
Floater suits a must, and I can't say enough about it. You're right, Steve.
I do agree, Jim. I love that saying too. Buy once, cry once. You'd be done with it. I love that.
Yeah.
With that being said, of course, with the thought of a hard water season starting as early as possibly next week in some areas, and we're hoping wherever it is that you go that it is safe ice. Make sure when in doubt, spud out. You must spud out in order to ensure that you have your safety and make sure you have a qualified spud to do that. But in the meantime, as Jay said, it is Black Friday and there's lots of great sales on it, and it is a good time to get a floater suit if in fact that is something that you want to do this winter's get out on the hard water.
And those new ice suits, especially the Gore-Tex ones, I know.
Yes.
Man, you can fish. You don't even need a shelter on the mild days. You are bulletproof in those things. Like, they are incredible because they breathe. Floater suits are very safe, but they don't breathe. So if you sweat in it, you can get very cold in a floater suit, believe it or not, as insulated as they are. But those Gore-Tex suits, they are bulletproof when it comes to the conditions. So I can't recommend them enough. But hey, hopefully we don't have to get that far into the weeds of it right now, right? So I think we still got some time to kill. But, man, usually, let's be honest, most years, Christmas break, right around Christmas, is when Couchiching usually gets its first layer of safe ice and anglers start going out on Couch. Most of my early ice trips is Aurelia, fishing on Couch. That's usually what I do. And then Rice Lake usually gets about the same time. You'll get some safe ice at Rice. So those are good spots to go. So, let's hope. But let's also hope for the steelheaders that have a slow fall that maybe we don't lock up right yet, and we still get a couple good weeks of steelheading, because I know I got some time off to use over Christmas and I want to do some steelheading, but maybe we'll see. But I will tell you this: I have slowly been getting the ice fishing stuff ready. Almost reluctantly, Scotty. Almost reluctantly, I've been getting it ready, and I'll probably have it ready by next weekend, ready to go, so that if I get a call, I can be gone and doing it. Because it's going to be busy over Christmas with family and work, and so. But I want to be able to get out if I can. So we'll see.
Right on, brother. Well,
All
as
right.
always, in the coming weeks, we will certainly talk a lot more about hard water and hard water season and what you should have, what you should prepare for. Some of the new things that are coming up. Of course, I'm really interested to see this Markham 360 and how that's all going to play in with the electronics. There's some really cool new baits that are hitting the shelves. But at the end of the day, I will say, everything that we have seen leading up to this point in regards to it being a very prosperous industry and things are going very well, there has been a bit of a hard stop. And I know some vendors aren't stocking their shelves like they typically do. They're trying to get rid of some of the older stock. So it is going to be an interesting year all across the board in regards to what is going to be available to us, what we're going to be able to purchase for this year and this coming season. So yeah, stay tuned. We got lots to tell you and lots to share with you.
Absolutely.
As always, Jay, thanks so much, my friend, for all you do and all you are to our community. Can't thank you enough, bud.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Right on. You take care,
All
Jay.
right.
All the best, my friend. And with that concludes our show. We are hoping Big Jim is feeling good and better for next Monday. Big shout out, a big hug, big kiss for our big guy. So glad to have Lawrence back. As I said, unfortunately, illness is going around. And of course, the anchor leg, or the anchor man, Jay Barnucz. It's always a pleasure to have him. And of course, all of you folks. Without you guys, none of this continues. We love your support. We truly appreciate it. And again, love you all. Stay safe. And if you are heading out ice fishing, please come back. That's the only ask that I have. Love to share pictures, but just come back so that you can do it all again and that we can have you here, part of our community. You guys have a wonderful Monday. You'll be able to take Tuesday off, and then we reconvene here Wednesday at 8 p.m. We have a really cool segment that is being shared with us by Kayak Bass Canada. Jason Brock and Aaron Dodds are going to be joining me and Danny Bacon. It is their year-end awards, so we're looking forward to being a part of that. So Wednesday, 8 o'clock. See you here. In the meantime, Dave, take us away. All the best, folks.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end.